Thanks for staying with us. You're watching Gravitas. Now, Turkey's foreign minister told U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry that Ankara and Moscow believe followers of Muslim cleric Fethullah Gulen were behind the killing of Russian ambassador Andrei Karlov. Earlier, Fethullah Gulen said he was shocked and deeply saddened by the assassination. Now, Recep Tayyip Erdogan considers the 77-year-old imam who has lived in self-imposed exile in Pennsylvania since 1999 to be a terrorist. He has accused Gulen of attempting to undermine the government and masterminding the failed July 15th military coup. But who exactly is Fethullah Gulen? What evidence does the Turkish government have against him, if any? And what's the public mood like in Turkey about Fethullah Gulen? Let's talk about all of that over the next couple of minutes. Joining me this evening is Mr. M.K. Bhadrakumar, former ambassador to Turkey. He continues to stay with us. And joining me also from the producer of TRT World, Turkish media, executive producer rather, Mohsen Mughal, joining me from Istanbul. Thanks both of you for joining me this evening. Let's first quickly take a look at, who exactly is Fethullah Gulen. Well, he is a Turkish cleric who lives in exile in the US. He's frail and lives in virtual seclusion in Pennsylvania in the United States. And he's accused of inspiring people in Turkey to overthrow President Erdogan. What's the truth behind Fethullah Gulen? First, a look at that.
It's a little hard to believe that this 75-year-old man is seen by Turkey's current rulers as a threat. In fact, Fethullah Gulen is accused of complicity in a coup attempt in July against the government of President Erdogan. At least 300 people died and more than 2,000 were injured in those tumultuous days. The subsequent government crackdown saw 100,000 people purged from government service, including military personnel, teachers and judges. They were deemed Gulen loyalists. So who is Fethullah Gulen? He's a Turkish cleric who lives in exile in the US. His Gulenist movement, or Hizmet, occupies the ideological middle ground between the secularists and Islamists in Turkey. It's said that around 10% of the Turkish population supports him. His movement says it favors peace and democracy. But critics say Hizmet is not transparent or democratic. His rivalry with Erdogan goes back 3 years when his supporters in the police and judiciary were accused of trying to implicate Erdogan's son Bilal in corruption scandals. Bureau reports, WION.
All right, let me first go across to Mohsen Mughal. Mohsen, what's the buzz back there in Turkey about what's been happening as far as Fethullah Gulen being linked to the assassin of the Russian envoy is concerned? Do you have an update?
Well, Sana, first of all, initial investigation. There's definitely a lot of shock and awe on the streets of Turkey. In Istanbul, where I am, I've been speaking to different people here and different experts here who definitely think that this is one act that definitely needs to be condemned and has shocked a lot of people. Initial investigations, Sana, suggest and point towards this 22-year-old assassin, towards his association with the Gulenist schools. I actually have a few points which I could actually read out to you,
sure.
Which suggest the connect. This Altintas, the 22-year man, had taken 2 days of annual leave just before the coup. That was the attempted coup of July 15th. He was on leave on July the 16th. He was on leave on July the 18th, and he was right after the coup. I beg your pardon. Right after the coup, he went on a leave, which was not the time, as the security analysts here believe, for a cop to go on a leave when there is a national emergency declared. And of course, they've gone back, checked the records, and the records so far, what we know, established that he had also studied in a Gulen-linked preparatory school and continued his further education in his hometown in a similar school in Shok, a district which is in the western side of the Aydin province. This also, as we now know, strengthens the suspicion that he was involved with the Gulenist school of thought and the Feto group.
Right. Ambassador Badru Kumar, what's the bigger picture here? You know, Russian ambassador shot in Turkey. The shooter said, before shooting him, that this is for the revenge of what you're doing to people in Syria. Now, Russia allied with Syria's Bashar al-Assad on one hand, and Turkey, on its part, wants to get rid of Bashar al-Assad. What's the bigger picture? Can you help make sense of all of this?
Well, you know, it's a very, very complicated picture. You're right. Turkey and Russia were pursuing different trajectories in the Syrian conflict,
right,
where Russia's ally is Iran, and then various other militia, Shiite militia, including Hezbollah from Lebanon. Turkey, on the other hand, was in alliance with the United States at the beginning when they were pushing the regime change agenda. You know, the then CIA director, David Petraeus, was in Turkey, in fact, to put the nut and bolt together for the actual intervention in Syria in 2012.
Okay.
Then after that, various other regional states got into it from the Persian Gulf area, and Turkey with them were pushing for the United States the regime change agenda in Syria. Somewhere along the line, Barack Obama decided that he will not intervene. The United States will not intervene. So the United States was supporting it from the rear. Turkey felt very unhappy about it because Turkey expected a direct American intervention.
Right.
They fell out. I'm simplifying the situation. They fell out. So that is one part of it. But they are also NATO allies.
That's
and
right.
The Turkish and the American operation against the Islamic State is conducted significantly from the Turkish eastern base of Incirlik. Then, on the other hand, though on the other side, Iran and Turkey have an overarching congruence of interest insofar as both face the Kurdish problem, and neither wants a Kurdish independent entity to appear in northern Syria and northern Iraq.
Okay.
So there is a congruence between them. In terms of the fragmentation of Syria, I think Turkey is very, very much going along with the Russian and the Iranian part of it.
That's right. That's also, in fact, reflective, Mohsin, deliberately could it be so after the recent events that Russia, Turkey, along with Iran, these three have excluded the United States now as far as a resolution or finding a resolution on the situation in Syria is concerned. How do you see the developments from here on? Also, you must be having some information on what proof or what proof does Turkey have on Fethullah Gulen being in fact, this assassin to be linked to Fethullah Gulen. Any specific leads that the Turkish government claims to share in the near future?
Yes, of course. Sana, there are two things. One, as Mr. Badru Kumar said, he's very rightly and simplified the things the state of play in Turkey at the moment. The major concern, I'll go to the first one first. The major concern in Turkey is the PKK, which is a terror organization, as the Turkish government believes. And we have seen many acts of terror in Istanbul, in Ankara, that PKK carried out as well. So that is one of the concerns, and that's where Turkey is not going to compromise. That's the understanding here. So that will also reflect on their policy in Syria, as Mr. Badru Kumar said. And that's also the reason why there is a rapprochement, one of the reasons why there's a rapprochement with Russia, and also the fact, as Mr. Badru Kumar said, it actually, the sequence of events, the chain of events developed as such that US and to a larger extent beyond the humanitarian work that the United Nations is doing, the UN itself also found itself fence-sitting, basically. So what you see, there are three countries at play right now working on a solution, and the latest addition to that is Kazakhstan has now offered for their country to host these talks between Russia, Turkey, and Iran. So nonetheless, these three countries are definitely going ahead and trying to forge something, and a solution which is palatable and helps all the three countries and their respective positions and interests in Syria. Coming back to the FETÖ organization, the situation here, there is a point of view that the recent assassination of the Russian ambassador in Ankara could very well be an attempt by this organization to sabotage the rapprochement between Turkey and Russia, try to create an environment of animosity, just to hit Turkey, because one, the attempt of coup didn't succeed. I was here that night when the coup happened, and if you're interested, I could give you a very quick rundown of things, of how it all unfolded. The night of 15th July was one night which I think changed the discourse completely in this country, with that one call that the president of this country made to the people, irrespective of their political ideologies, whether they were followers of AKP, the president, whether they were followers of CHP, MHP, across the political parties, everyone heeded to that call and came out on the streets. Now that has acted as a unition. I know there will be people outside this country, academicians, researchers, politicians, diplomats, wanting to deny that, but the fact of the matter is, I've seen this and I've experienced this. That night actually culminated a huge support for the president, and that thinking is now also helping develop the internal discourse of this country and the foreign policy as well.
Right.
Coming back to, sorry, go ahead.
Sure. Mohsen, complete, and then we'll move on. Yeah.
Yeah, what I was saying is, coming back to the why there is a strong suspicion on the involvement of the Fethullah terror organization, or the Gulenists. They are recognized as FETÖ right now in Turkey. This organization, as the Turkish government believes and claims to have proof of, has not just been active within Turkey. It's absolutely wrong to think that they are active within this country. They are active everywhere in major parts of the world. They've got their schools, they've got their financial institutions, they've got their voluntary organizations that work not just in Turkey, that used to work not just in Turkey, but across the globe. They've got their schools across Africa. There were schools in Pakistan. There were schools in the US as well. Actually, 2,000 chartered schools, if I'm not wrong, across the globe. So you can understand the extent of the influence that the Gulenists have across the globe. And that is what they're using, as the government here claims, to hurt the immediate interests of Turkey diplomatically as well. They are capable of lobbying against Turkey, not from within the country, but also from outside.
We get the picture
country.
Because you very aptly, very correctly described what the situation is and how far is their reach in terms of 2,000 chartered schools you mentioned across the globe. But right now, this shooting that we saw, Ambassador Badra Kumar, very recently, shooting of the Russian envoy there, and also this failed coup attempt. Now that really turns the situation in Turkey quite complex in terms of security, don't you think? So that's another major challenge that Turkey perhaps is going through. We've seen suicide bombings very recently, dozens of people being killed across various locations.
Definitely, there is a spillover, blowback, whichever way you want to call it, from the Syrian conflict taking place. Then the tensions with the PKK, that has escalated, aggravated in the last 1 year, and they are also involved in the situation. But you see, the main thing is this, that if Gulen is involved, you have to go back to the coup. There are a lot of Turks believe that the United States was aware of this coup, and Gulen is living there in Pennsylvania. And I think Turkey's arguments are very legitimate. They have an extradition treaty with the United States. United States has time and again taken guys away from Turkish soil under the extradition treaty. No questions asked, and Turks never put any questions at all. And now Americans are refusing to hand over this guy. Now the point is this, that that under the extradition treaty, they should have responded to the Turkish request, and they haven't responded. Now, again, you are coming back to it that, so Turkey's role in the geopolitics of the region, in the Syrian conflict, in Iraq, and so on, there is an attempt to influence that. Right. And the rapprochement in particular between Turkey and Russia. So the question definitely has to be posed, who stands to gain? Who stands to gain, right. Right. On that note, we'd like to wrap up this discussion on gravitas. I'd like to thank you, Mohsin, for joining us this evening. Also, Ambassador Badr Kumar, thank you so much for taking our time and being with us here in the studio. We're taking a very short break. News and updates follow on the other side. Don't go anywhere.